All right, welcome. This is the August 16th regular meeting of the North Shore Board of Commissioners. And our first item will be roll call.
Commissioner Adams,
Here.
Commissioner Pratt,
Present.
Commissioner Webster,
Here.
Commissioner Wallum,
Here.
and Commissioner Byers. Are you here in?
Commissioner Byers is under the weather. He said he might be logging in remotely, but
Okay.
not likely.
Okay, no worries. I will.
Call it excuse
Chief Cowan,
Here.
Legal Counsel Paxton,
Here.
and I am filling in for Amy. She's absent. I am Killian, interim board secretary.
Thank you, Don. All right, item number 2, public comment. Don, do we have any?
I didn't see any in Amy's North Shore the board secretary email box.
Okay, so no pre-submitted public comment. If there's anyone on the call who would like to comment, raise your hand, please. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to approval of the meeting agenda. And before we approve, I'd like to suggest that we do 2 things. Amend it to remove item 4.3. I understand that that subcommittee is not prepared to have the final draft available to us. And then the second is our discussion of Board of Commissioners meeting frequency. I think that we still have that discussion, but no decision is made until we can have all 4 board members, or all 5 board members. Talking 4.2? 4.2, yes, correct.
Okay, and then I'd like to add an item on policy 1400 board meetings for discussion.
Okay. Do you think that should put in place of 4.3? Is that a natural spot for it, or at the?
Sure.
And Commissioner Admin, I printed out an older version. There is a 4.9 car purchase.
Oh,
I unfortunately cannot print out the version of the file.
It's correct on AV capture. It's just I printed it. I was trying to before this meeting. I was trying to print out. I correct.
okay, so let's make sure we're all on the same page here. Item 4.1, review of alerting system. 4.2 will strictly be discussion with no decision. 4.3 has been changed to approval of revised policy.
No, just discussion of policy 1400.
Right, we've removed approval of revised policy 1410, changed it to discussion of policy 1400.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yep.
Okay. 4, 5, 4, 4, 5, 4, 6, 4, 7, 4, 8, no change, and then adding item 4.9, 8 car purchase.
Okay, I move we approve that agenda.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 And aye, it's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we'll start in board discussion and possible action items. 4.1, review of station alerting system proposals.
So we were promised and we're expecting a revised quote as you may recall on station 51. But it has not been delivered. However, I asked Deb to be here to ask or to answer any technical questions and maybe explain what we're looking at. And we're asking for 3 different variations or options to the station 51 proposal. So I think that take it over to Deb.
So the system that's here was installed when the building was new back in 2010. This system is what's called a Crestron brand. Items on the wall at Crestron. Speak up. So can you guys hear me? No. The systems that are used at Shoreline are a QSys brand, so that's one change difference is the difference of brand, but if you may know, there was an issue a month ago or so with the,
It wasn't even that long ago. I think 3 weeks ago.
yeah, with the doorbell here. And the doorbell sound just makes a quick chime. But what happened was for minutes, the doorbell kept making that chime over and over and over, kind of driving people mad. We called the vendor out to look at it, and there's pieces or components of the system that they said are old and possibly failed. And so that's why that's what triggered this to move up in priority was what needs to be replaced to get the system stable, keeping it as is. And that was the quote that we had given you before. The concern is that just replaces the component to make it stable, but it's still running. Most of the other components are still from the old. It's actually 2007-ish is the date on those parts. And it was installed in 2010, but the date on them is about 2007. And so there's an age to the rest of the system. That's why I asked them for a more detailed quote or proposal for replacing the rest of the system and making it modern. So that's quote 1 and quote 2. Quote 3 would be replacing the system with a system like Shoreline has at all of the other locations. That way all the buildings are consistent. So my thought being, if you're going to replace the system, you might as well replace it with what the other buildings are using, not just replace it with the modern version of this point. That makes sense. That's why I'm getting 3 proposals.
We've already done 57.
No, 57 doesn't. We have a proposal to install a system at 57, and that would be the same brand that Shoreline has, not the brand that's here.
It's actually the brand that almost all of Norcom, all of the stations that have programmable alerting uses.
I thought we already.
No, we tabled it because we were waiting for a complete.
Yeah.
And wondering what the pricing was going to be here and whether or not we were going to get a discount if we did both at the same time, you know, and if there was a prioritization of the projects.
Good.
Are we still waiting on those bids?
Yes.
We have a complete bid for 57, not here though.
Okay.
Which is the big.
Okay. There's a lot of features, you know, bells and whistles that this station has that 57 does not, or that any other Shoreline stations do not. So for example, if you look above you, there's these lights, those 2 little white things up there. Those are colored lights that will light based on the type of units that was dispatched. So if it goes red, I don't know the colors myself, but if it goes red, it's an engine. If it's blue, it's a aid. If it's green, it's a medic. So they have things that way when you're in the workout room, if you can't hear, or if you're wearing headphones and you can't hear it, you can see the light and know that it's your unit being dispatched. That's a feature in this building that none of our other locations.
So you're getting that. Are we going to incorporate that in the quote, or do we?
Yes, so that is why, again, why we wanted to talk about the 2 different brands of systems to make sure that those lights, which only exist here, will work in either of those proposals. They said yes to that, but that is something that is not in the plan for 57. We can add that to the proposal if that is a feature that is desired, but I've never heard anybody request that feature.
The challenge that we have is that we were, as you may recall, the original bid was just under 50,000. And that was just to replace the parts that were broken, essentially. To look at upgrade, it's going to be, I don't know, twice that it's going to be expensive. So from my standpoint, and Zeb and I have talked about this quite a bit, we're going to spend that kind of money, you know. I don't want to spend that kind of money and then a month later, oh yeah, another part's failed or another thing's broken. I think we need to go in with eyes wide open and looking at whether we need, you know, what do we need to do and where's our confidence level and comfort level, you know, in the expense. So that's why Zeb is taking this approach of looking at 3 different options for this station.
Commissioner.
Yeah, I was gonna say, depending on the order of magnitude of expense, it seems like it would make the most sense to be consistent with all the other stations in terms of equipment. But it also seems like potentially maybe we could kind of have a modular proposal or somehow have the ability to decide, does this station really need the particular, some of those bells and whistles or not, depending on how big a difference the price of it is.
Right.
And we got to look at it, you know, we're 8 cars we're purchasing, we have a bunch of stuff, so then we've got some big purchases already, so we really want to look at how we budget this and not hit our reserves we have next year coming up. And we can put some of this into that budget, but we need to look at this.
Sure.
With supply issues, we're probably looking at 6 months of lead time anyway.
That's what I figured.
So, but, you know, yeah, we'll have a more robust conversation once we have the quotes in front of us and we can talk about the pros and cons of each of these and so forth.
Before we get too far down this track, that legal counsel Paxson pointed out an important kind of wrinkle, right? That we're required to have a competitive bid process. I understand that you would like to go with J Mark, right? But in order for North Shore to go with J Mark, there's some kind of legal things that we need to take care of in terms of how the board makes decisions. So, Mr. Paxson, could you review that issue for Commissioner Admin, Wallum, and Webster, please?
Yeah, so in Washington law, there's the competitive bidding requirement for public works. Public work is something that the district pays for that improves its real property. In this case, it sounds like they're going to be installing these devices. It's not just purchasing the material; it's actually the work to install it, put the wires through the walls, screw things, devices onto the walls. So that's a public works, and there's two thresholds that I'm aware of. The first is state law. There's thresholds that are minimums where you have to either use a small works roster if it's under $350,000, or you have to go out to competitively bid. I'm not sure exactly where this dollar amount is going to be, but it sounds like it's above the $30,000 threshold for bidding in some manner, either small works or competitive bidding. So then there's a few exceptions to competitive bidding requirements, and I've started discussing those with the fire chief about whether or not this is like a sole source contract or a special facilities, a special market condition, things like that could be exceptions for the competitive bidding requirement, and we just haven't gotten into the details to know whether or not it would fall into that. So I just wanted to raise that as a potential issue out there. Probably needs a little bit more work, but I don't see a problem with the district getting an estimate of what this is going to cost, so it can start making decisions on where it should go.
Thank you, Mr. Paxson. Appreciate that.
And that's a great point. One of the things that we did look at was whether or not there is a consistency and compatibility concern of making sure that the stations are all in similar function. When you go to when you're controlling the interface and the user side of things, and again with the compatibility and with Norcom 2, the QSYS system is only supplied in fire stations in the Northwest by J-Mark. There is other companies that do QSYS systems, but not in fire stations. So, but we definitely, once we get the quotes, we're going to have to either defend or look at either defend sole source and make sure that we're comfortable with that, or we're going to have to look at getting other quotes and looking at MRSC and small. But there is a concern and a probably a justifiable need of staying consistent with the QSYS systems. So.
And the fire chief and I were talking about another issue related to this is the district has its own policies, which sets different thresholds for competitively bidding these types of projects. They're actually lower than the state thresholds because the state thresholds changed about a year and a half or 2 years ago. So we could actually raise our thresholds to be the same as state law, which I think is what Shoreline does. And it would make it more compatible. The process would be more compatible to what Chief Cowan is used to when he does public works for Shoreline.
Yeah, so I think that it would be worth maybe examining our policy. I think that's policy, I wrote it down. 6200 to bring that in line with shorelines policy and with state guidelines. So let's put that on the agenda for our next meeting, please, Dawn.
Is that something you're on that subcommittee? You're 14.
Yes,
Is that something we could have to? That subcommittee just throwing it out.
I think it's substantively different than what they're working on. And will probably require a subcommittee to examine that.
With your permission or indulgence, what I could do is I could take a look at 6200 and look to see where those differences are with our policy, and then, maybe redline those or then give that to Matt to take a look at in preparation for, an amendment here or amending the policy or adopting a new one, however it is,
That'd be great.
if that's
Yep.
okay.
Please, Chief.
You
Okay.
want to send that out to our board members, get red lights?
Sure, once we get it redlined and stuff like that.
Thank you.
Volunteer on. No, I'll work with you. I'll work
No,
with you on it.
jumping on Zeb, is there anything else?
No, I was gonna follow on what the chief said about J-Mark being the vendor of choice. And I called the QSIS manufacturer, I forgot where they were located, but I asked them for the Pacific Northwest region in a fire station, who can you recommend besides J-Mark as an installer of your systems? And they came back and said, in this region, in the Washington region, J-Mark is the only one who does fire stations. So just putting that out there.
It sounds like we may have justification to waive the competitive bidding process, which we can do as a board if it comes to that. But let's
Sure.
continue, get the quotes, see what it's going to cost, what they can do for us.
Sure. I just want to make sure that we're all comfortable, including legal, on this as well.
Any other questions for the chief or Zeb on this?
So I guess, I'm gonna hopefully say that we have this proposal by the next.
Yeah.
So if we can, let's just keep it on the agenda for next week.
Sure.
Right. Okay, moving on, item 4.2, discussion of Board of Commissioners meeting frequency. I think that Commissioner Webster, you're the one that kind of brought this up a few meetings back. Would you like to lead discussion on this, please?
Yeah. What brought that up is that because we subcontracted out contracted out the labor part of it, our meetings are not as involved as they were before. And I believe that we can conduct one meeting a month that would cover this, with the option to add another meeting if, a special call meeting. And I believe a lot of other boards, fire boards, do the same thing as one meeting a month. So, that's my view. I think we do it. If we stay with the first Tuesday of the month.
Commissioner Admin?
And also, one more thing, I certainly do like five people. Works well.
yeah, I agree. That seems reasonable to me, unless others have a compelling reason why 2 meetings is better or necessary.
Commissioner Woolham, anything to add here?
Just that I would agree with that. I think we only need to do once a month with the option of adding in if we've got something else going on.
Right, Mr. Paxton, can you advise on best way forward? Can we make a motion here and then follow it up with a change in policy 1400, or do we need to change the policy first before we can make that transition?
I would change the policy and pass a resolution revising your regular meeting schedule. I saw a resolution attached to the agenda that that's the old resolution. So I would perhaps maybe cancel our next meeting, and if that's the way we want to do it, and pass this resolution, moving us to once per month at our next regularly scheduled meeting.
Okay, so just to clarify, you're recommending that at our next meeting, which would be the first Tuesday in September, that we cancel that meeting?
If you were planning on having meetings only on the third Tuesday of the month, is that the plan?
So the first Tuesday,
Okay,
so it'd be the 6th of September.
then at that meeting, you could pass a resolution and modify your policies to meet once a month.
Okay, so do we need to have the policy modification prepared at that time, at the time of the resolution?
I've got a note. I have the policy in front of me. It's policy 1400. And what it says right now is regular meetings. The board shall have at least one meeting per month. That's all it says.
Later on in the policy, it also establishes that they should be on the first regular meetings at 5 p.m. on the first and third Tuesdays. Pretty confident. So yeah, it's been policy to have 2 meetings. So, Mr. Paxton, can you do resolution at our next regularly scheduled meeting? And then have the policy changes prepared at that time? Don't we need to have a first reading before we can officially pass a policy change?
Yeah, the district's policy, I think, is to have one time where the changes are in front of the public, so that probably have those reviewed first and then passed. You can pass the resolution, I think, with the policy change. So I would try to have those pass at the same time.
Okay, so let's prepare to have the new policy read at our next meeting. Have a resolution then prepared, and at our next regular meeting, we can just cancel the second meeting in September. And then at the first meeting in October, we can officially pass the resolution and the policy change. Does that timeline work?
That seems to work, yes.
Commissioner Abbott?
So I'm pretty sure because I'm just having to be looking at the resolution and at the policy. The policy really just says at least one meeting a month, but the resolution is what specifies the first and third Tuesdays of the month at 5 p.m. So I think with just regard to the one meeting, I mean, we can review that policy because I have a proposed change to that policy anyways, but we might not have to change that policy just with regard to this particular issue.
Okay.
But we can certainly review it and make sure if we need to.
Yeah, and I also would like to get Commissioner Byers' input on this, just to see if there's any. So it's good that we're going to be making the decision in October. Okay, anything else on that discussion? All right, moving on, item 4.3, excuse me, discussion of policy 1400.
So 1400 is actually board meetings. And so I had a separate issue that I thought might be worth bringing up, which is that late in 2021, we made a change to that policy in terms of board membership. And that was when we were going through the discussions with Lake Forest Park and Kenmore, and we wanted to make sure they were present at these meetings to be able to express their opinion. Subsequently, since the contract for service has been implemented, we have not had any attendance of Lake Forest Park or Kenmore City Council members. I don't think there's a special interest on their part to attend. So that that section of board membership specified 3 types of board members. Voting members, which would be the fire commissioners. Advisory non-voting, which was the city council representative from one from each city council. Then we had these temporary advisory non-voting, which were fire commissioner candidates. And I guess my thought is that I almost feel like we could really roll back to our previous policy where we just had board membership. It's just members of the board. I don't know that we need to have these other types of members any longer. I think that the utility of that is kind of past. So I just wanted to throw that out for discussion and see if there's other opinions on that.
Commissioner Wilson, I agree that was for all the issues we went through in the last 2.5 years. I do not think that we need that section. I believe that because we have the ability to have our community get online or come and attend our meetings. If the city had any issues, they would send a representative, contact our board chair. So I think that we could roll back that section.
Commissioner Woolham, as a commissioner who got to sit in that seat, did you find that valuable? Do you think it's worth continuing with that, or is what's your perspective?
I don't think that it seemed overly valuable at the time. I mean, it's nice to be able to say your opinion, but you're also missing a lot of important facts because you're not attending the executive sessions. So I feel like even though I was allowed to speak, I was sometimes speaking about things I wasn't as aware of. So I guess in the long run, I don't know that it was overly valuable.
All right. So it sounds like we have consensus at least amongst 3 of the 5. And so, Commissioner Adam, could you maybe do a proposed revision and bring that to our September meeting?
I will. Sure, I'll send a draft to legal counsel as well.
Anything to add to that discussion, Mr. Paxton?
No.
Okay, item 4.4, distribution of hours at station 51 and 57. Chief?
This is part of our commitment to accurately capturing the costs associated with staffing rates in Legacy North Shore Fire Department compared to the overall organization. And so what I printed out was an example or a sample of Engine 151 for 1 month. And my plan, I just want to present this to you guys as an example of what I'm going to be looking at doing, which would be taking all these hours and then assigning an hourly rate, to each one of these individuals to capture the overall cost. And that would give us, and I do that for every rig, and then we compare the rigs at 51 and 57 compared to 63, 4, and 5. And then that would give us the percentages that we're looking at for driving the budget for the following year.
Would that include overtime costs to operate each of those apparatus?
What I'm planning on doing is not including the actual cost of overtime, because that would be very hit and miss throughout the system, is to look at actual hours, for at a straight time rate. So that, because for example, I don't think that would be accurate, because there's going to be more overtime costs down here, I would guess, proportionally to Shoreline or to Legacy Shoreline units. So I was going to look at straight time hours, and I think that's what's specified in ILA as well.
Can you clarify why there's be more overtime here than
the staffing here was when we started looking at mandatory overtimes and so forth, there was more mandatory overtimes and so forth that was going on at 51 and 57 than the other stations up in Shoreline, which kind of indicates the staffing levels. And so as we start moving forward, and now that we're staffing up to 8157, which is gonna be the first one to be filled with overtime, that's gonna be overtime. I don't think that that's appropriate to assess that higher percentage to the legacy North Shore costs. And so if I look,
Maybe that we're hiring.
Yeah, correct.
We're trying to fill a lot of those positions.
right. I just didn't think that, so I felt that looking at the straight time rates and not factoring in overtime in any of the rates and using straight time rates would be the most appropriate and fairest way to account for the percentages.
Appreciate it.
Isn't there just you need X amount of people to fully staff the North Shore rigs. You need X amount of people to pull, which equals so many hours. You need X amount of people to fully staff the shoreline rigs, which equals a certain amount of hours. It seems like it would be even, you wouldn't have to go through such a complex process to come up with a ratio of hours, because it's just based on the FTEs here and the FTEs there.
Yes,
But actually, I mean,
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Okay.
this is how we actually tell what's being managed. I know it's like, you put your manpower and what have you, but this just gives a breakdown of what the hours that we need. Just at least get it going and see where we're at. I we would achieve.
Okay.
What this will, just to make sure that we're clear on this, there will be some nuances to this too, because each person has a different hourly rate as well. It'll just depend on where they're at throughout the system. Now, granted, an equal firefighter in Legacy North Shore, Legacy North Shoreline, if with all the same qualifications and all that, will be identical, but that's not the case. It's throughout the system, we have different people with different qualifications. Some with longevity, some with education bonuses, some with a certain certification, if it's TRT or rescue swimmer or whatever. So there's going to be nuances to it, but theoretically, overall, that should be very fairly minor. I'm hoping. I'm also hoping that once I can produce a report, I can do a couple of different scenarios to just see really what kind of fluctuations there is. Like just looking at the hours compared to looking at the actual costs and so forth, and try to give you some kind of semblance or comfortability of what the variance would look like.
And that's what I-
Attention. Right. So,
Okay.
so what I'll be doing is preparing this, preparing a report. Now we're gonna have to take a snapshot of from the point that we started staffing so it's not gonna be a full year, obviously, by the time that I have to establish the budget for next year. So so for 2023, there may be not as good of a snapshot, but it's what we're gonna do, and it'll be the best that we have. But for the budgeting for 2024, I would expect a much more complete snapshot of the overall costs. But I just wanted to provide an example of what I'm looking at doing.
With what's available?
Yeah.
Okay, so Commissioner Webster, you satisfied?
It's a,
Yes. Okay, all right. Item 4.5, discussion of King County Fire Commissioners and Washington State Council memberships. Commissioner Woolen, this was something that you were kind of interested in.
Yes, and I guess I'm still confused. I have not done a bunch of research on it, but I thought that we were part of a group. I guess I'm not sure which group that is, so I need to continue to do more research and work with Dawn on that, and maybe Chief Cowan.
Thank you. Dawn, can you address this?
Yeah, so the one that that Commissioner Wilmot, you emailed me about was the one group that we are not part of. So the membership fee for that one is based on AV versus most other ones are just minor, I think the King County Fire Chiefs or Commissioners, so a couple of them are like minimal fees, like $200, but the one you sent me about was, since it's based on AV, it's pretty much a ridiculous fee. We used to get invoices for those. It's like, here, pay your invoice, and it's, $2,000 or $3,000 just for that. And if you look at REV from 2022, which is in their extremely higher tiered section, it's and the way they, I don't understand their tiers, but looking at that section of where our AV is, it would basically, I think the minimum membership fee is like 4,000 and the maximum in their tiers is like 6,000, and it's just it. When Chief Tolbert was around, he just didn't feel that that one was worth it for that cost based on AV.
What is that organization we're talking about?
It's a
I think that's the Washington State Council.
Yes,
Yeah.
the Washington State Fire Commissioners Association. I
Yes.
believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe that's the one that hits my radar too when I'm doing budget. I'm like, holy cow, you know, kind of things. The shoreline belongs.
Yeah, all you do. Okay. So Commissioner Wong, would you mind doing a little bit of research, finding out what the benefits of being part of that organization are? And then we can have something to make a decision based on.
Yes, I can do that.
Excellent, thank you.
Because
Mhm.
Shoreline's member, we need to.
I was gonna make a friendly suggestion that may not be as necessary, especially since you have not. You know, likely that you have not been in the past. With the caveat that I'm always encouraging, whether it's commissioners or firefighters or officers or whatever, involvement in going out to conferences and, you know, pursuing further education and all that. And there is value in going to conferences and seminars. And I can work with Commissioner Woolham on this, but what those benefits are for belonging to that association, I believe it's discounted rates in some of the conferences and seminars. Some of the materials, it would be, it'd be interesting to see what the value is, especially, you know, since shoreline commissioners are already, so. But I think that's a decision that the board needs to make once we have some of that more information.
And Don, maybe figuring out the status of our membership.
We've never been a member.
How about the King County Fire Commissioners?
King County, yes.
Yes.
This
That
one,
was not much.
this one, no.
And we are still currently members of the King County.
Yes, I can look in bias and double check that our 2022 membership is paid, but if it's not, it will be.
I want to believe that it was paid earlier in this year.
Great.
So the membership should be until sometime next year.
Got it. Okay. Anything else on that? All right, just to follow up, Commissioner Wong, you're gonna do a little research, provide us, work with Don and Chief Cowan.
One suggestion I would have is that maybe reach out to some of the shoreline commissioners to see their perspective, because they probably want to know that they would have a different perspective than me as to the value.
Okay, item 4.6, an update on our subcommittee on administrative activities.
That would be me and
Commissioner Webster.
fires, but due to my wife passed away, I did not work on this week. I know Chief, you and I have one item on, so we need to sort out. And that was like 3 months ago.
Do you remember what the item was?
I haven't written down a whole
Okay.
file.
I probably do too somewhere, but if you
It was a budgetary item we need to know before we go. to budget.
if you can find it, just shoot me a quick email and maybe.
So we'll keep that on the agenda.
Okay. Okay, item 4.7, discussion on impact fees. Chief Cowan.
So, as you may or may not know, Shoreline has an impact fee program, is to mitigate the impacts of new development on the current infrastructure. It's paid off of by the developers in the permitting process as it comes through the city of Shoreline. The impact fees are, in my opinion, a way of not burdening our existing taxpayers for increasing or the infrastructure for capital projects that comes from new development. So, for example, you know, the light rails, I'll just take the light rail stations, you know, in Shoreline. There's 2 light rail stations that are coming in, the city rezoned that area. There's impacts that are new development, you know, higher density, higher, you know, structures, et cetera, that have impacts on our ability to provide services. So each of those developers pays a fee to help mitigate those impacts. And so, for example, we are using some of those fees to help pay for Station 63, the new construction, not the whole thing. You can only assess the fees to be used on the portion that's from new developments or new improvements. So it's been fairly successful with us in that we've been able to not have our taxpayers continue to pay for some of the things that we're going to be needed because of the new development. And I'll give you an example. We are considering and we'll be making a decision on Thursday. What's likely is that we'll be purchasing an additional ladder truck. We have, as you may or may not know, we have a lot of multifamilies that are coming through, that are already being built, but we have a bunch more in the neighborhood of about 30 multifamilies that are coming through. And we're also next week going to have a meeting with WSRB. We're in an audit, process. And I have a feeling and believe that they will require a dedicated reserve and or second truck, due to the new developments that are coming through. So that is an example of where you could use those fees. What you can't use the fees for is just if you have a 10-year life cycle on a fire engine and you're replacing it every 10 years, you cannot use the fees, just to replace the full fire engine. But if you have a decreased life cycle that is attributed to the growth of either population or calls or a special need, special circumstance of like a ladder truck for accessing taller buildings, you can to that. So if a fire engine, or just make it easy, if a fire engine's life cycle went from 10 years to 8 years, 20% of the cost of a fire engine could be paid for by impact fees. I'm having this discussion with you right now because we've been notified, Fire Marshal LaFontaine notified me that Kenmore is looking at some higher density to the east of us, out past 83rd, and looking at higher density and taller buildings. This is very similar to what Shoreline did in preparation for the light rail stations and so forth around the light rail stations, and which prompted a lot of growth. It's not here yet. I don't even know where it's at. He just shot me an email and I was like, you know what? I need to have a conversation with you all to find out if there's any interest in looking at impact fees in either Kenmore and or Lake Forest Park. I think it's probably more, there's probably more impacts here at Kenmore than Lake Forest Park, but it's something that can be controversial. The pros are that, it's relieving some of the burden on our current taxpayers. The con is from, that I heard, this is the, I've already done it in 2 other fire departments. And I've heard the same arguments, which is from pro developers or builders that, if you make the impact fees, for this development too much, then we won't, develop there. I can't say with absolute certainty that has pushed developers to not pursue things at Shoreline or my previous department. But it does seem like the old adage of location, of if it's the right place to build, then it's the right place to build, and they incorporate that into, the cost of doing business. Commissioner Webster probably has, some insight to this, but, that is the con, is that, if we have impact fees, is that stopping developers from building there, which may or may not be a good thing, depending on what the growth is looking like and the capability of infrastructure and so forth. But I just want to have a conversation about this, see if there's any interest in this. It's a bit of work. It took my first department that I did it in, it was the first in the state. It took about almost 2 years, over a year and a half, 2 years. With the city of Shoreline, it took about a year to get through, because you have to incorporate that into the urban growth and so forth. And there's some documentation on that. I'm just opening this up to see if there's any interest in this, and I can even provide more information, but I don't want to do any more work if there's, some interest in this. I can answer, I could keep on going on for an hour,
Well,
but do you have questions?
Let's do some questions. Yeah. My feeling is that we are going to grow, but at this point, I'd like to see how your program is set up and get more information on this before we can approach it. And I really I'm glad you brought it up to us, but I'd like to see this look at the next year after we get some time under our belts to get going. It'd be interesting to see how the fees are set up, the process. How shoreline is about to.
I have two governing guidance documents on it. They're both 70 to 90 pages long. And some of it, there is some redundancy between the two of them, but it is what's required, by law to be able to put these into place. I can send that to the entire board, for your review. Please keep in mind that I wrote those 5 years ago, I believe now, somewhere in that neighborhood. I update every year with the annual report as required by law. The fees are dictated and collected by the city. We have input to the city as to how to modify the formula. Right now, we are collecting more than was forecasted because the growth is higher than forecasted. I used the city's forecasted growth model to build the formula, and it's exceeding that. And so, which is one of the reasons why not only is the growth, driving us towards another ladder truck, but the fees are there to pay for that new ladder truck. But I can certainly forward that to you guys for consideration, and then, go from there.
Commissioner Abbott?
Do you know if Kenmore or Lake Forest Park have any sort of impact fee programs in place, the cities?
I was reluctant to even ask any questions regarding this if there wasn't interest from the board. Because I don't want to get anybody excited in one way or another, on this without, at least some kind of support or direction from the board. So I have no idea. And it's probably on their website. And frankly, I just haven't. This is one of those things that I would spend the time to prepare some more stuff for you if there was interest. I could go to their website and I could probably find out, or I could go to the city and ask, questions and so forth. And if you'd like, I can. I don't know if Kenmore or Lake Forest Park has any impact fees. Ironically, I've been with Shoreline now for a little over 9 years, 9.5 years. And when I first got to Shoreline, it was there was two things that were important to me. To diversify the revenue stream and build the fire benefit charge, which you guys were way ahead of the game, on this, in North Shore. And the second was to build the impact fee program. The impact fee program at that time, I went to the city and said, hey, I want to do some fire impact fees. And they were like, no, we don't do impact fees. We don't do impact fees. Well, about 2 years later, they put impact fees on, and I believe it was transportation and parks. They don't quote me on that. But they put, and then I went back and said, okay, you guys are doing impact fees. The fire department needs impact fees too, to build up the infrastructure of the forecasted growth. So at that time, there was none, but you're starting to see that in a lot of areas now. So it wouldn't surprise me entirely if Kenmore, has any or not, or Lake Forest Park for that matter. So
Can you bank those to any degree? Like, let's say you have a lot of growth, and ultimately you're gonna have to build a new fire station to accommodate that. Can you bank those in any way, or what's the time frame like from when they come in to when you have to spend them?
You can bank some, but you have to be very careful. So part of the process of building an impact fee program is you build out a 20-year capital replacement program. And then you look at a roll, that's rolling, but you actually focus that back down to a 6-year rolling, 6-year plan. And so when you collect those fees, like right now in Shoreline, we're collecting quite a bit of fees. Next year it could drop substantially or be zero even or something. So it could be very cyclical, potentially. So you can bank a little bit, but it's within a tight time frame. And if you over collect or you have to use them for the specified, for capital improvements, capital projects. And if you don't, then you can get in trouble. If you over collect, substantially, you need to give the money back. Or in this case, we're reallocating, some of the funds to the truck because it's defendable because of the new development that's over, it's over what was expected. So you can bank it for a short amount of time. but you are in this typically in this rolling 6-year window that you have to be, appropriately spending the money.
And Chief, I'm sorry, you said this a couple times, but it has to be used on capital projects, not operational expenses.
That's correct. Capital, there's two big things, capital projects only, not staffing, not other expenses or anything like that. And it has to be attributed to the impacts of new development. Again, 63 is a good
You
example.
require increased staffing to meet the needs of this new development, you still can't.
But it does alleviate other, so like for example, both North Shore and Legacy North Shore and Shoreline have their capital funds. And RCL did a study, and you have a capital replacement strategy, and a fund to support that. By, and some of that may be, allocated for, potentially new impacts from new development. Whereas if you have the impact fee program, that frees up some of that money. So there is the potential of relief of your overall budget. If you're allocating operational expenses into your capital fund to fund some of those things that are now being funded by, an impact fee program.
I feel like it's certainly worth exploring, getting more information about, so we would have a sense of like the order of magnitude of fees that we would be talking about potentially, or places we could use it, or other aspects like, would we have to then work with the cities of Kenmore, Lake Forest Park to want to adopt the program themselves, and ours would be part of it. But just kind of the logistics side of it too.
You have to work with the cities. The cities are the ones that have the legislative authority to impose the impact fee, so it has to be built into the city's growth management. What else was I gonna say? And the impact fees, depending, you have to target, you have to identify what you're gonna put them towards. So you have to be able to not only forecast the growth, but forecast your capital needs, or decrease life cycle on this, or a new fire station, or a new ladder truck, or things of that nature, and you build that into your capital program. And so I identified certain needs. One of the, like I already mentioned this, the biggest one up until 2028 is the assisting with the construction of Station 63. The expansion and the larger station that we built to accommodate the needs for the next 40 or 50 years. After 2028, that's when, those run out, or when that plan runs out. And then we would have to either drop the formula or target something new, that's being impacted. For example, if Point Wells was to get built, which is, you guys, if that was to be built and we needed to build a new Station 62 in Richmond Beach area, and that could be attributed to impacts of new development, maybe a portion, I can't imagine all of it, but a portion of that station, those funds can then go towards that, and you can bank towards that a little bit if that's part of your growth or part of your plan.
Commissioner Wall, anything to add to this discussion?
Well, I definitely think it's worth looking into, to at least see. Because I think that could be quite beneficial if we're getting all this growth.
And to be clear, I don't know of a ton of growth that's coming in. I just know that they're potentially going to rezone. And it's usually the precursor to, some growth. My suggestion would be I can send out the two guiding documents, and I can find out, what's in place in Lake Forest Park and Kenmore, and we can start there.
I think that's appropriate.
Okay, sure. So I'll send you those documents and find out, and then, at your discretion, add it to an agenda item in the future. We can have a more, more conversation.
Thanks, Chief. Okay, item 4.8, service contracts discussion.
We had, as you may know, we had during the heat wave, we had a call that kind of sparked some thought with me. at St. Edwards Park, we had during the heat wave, we had an elderly couple that needed to be rescued down from a trail, down there, and they, dehydrated and overheated and so forth, and I got to thinking, I was like, there are some special, needs and risks associated with that property, which is a state park, and so I reached out to Don to find out if what kind of service contract we had with them, or what kind of revenue we were receiving from Bastyr or the lodge or whatever, or even the parks, and it's minimal. And so my question to you is, again, looking for some direction, or if it's something that's being supported. I've pursued service contracts with state agency and exempt properties in Shoreline for service contracts that are appropriate to the needs of providing services there. We have a number of them around Shoreline, DOT, DSHS, King County Metro, the college, things of that nature, and setting up those service contracts, and and specifically when we have potentially a fairly significant emergency services needs up there at Bastyr and the lodge. What was it, 4,000?
Yeah, in the past, it's been minimal, and 1 year we received a note from the Park Service saying, please only bill for services for the buildings only, and which limits me on what, because I have to go by what the property value, whatever it is on the King County's website, and that information isn't always up to date.
So my question, I guess, is from the board is typically these contracts are being set up with properties that are exempt, that are property tax exempt, and there is still a legal direction to develop service contracts to provide those services. It gets a little sticky about EMS and so forth, but what I've done is I've looked at developing contracts with those properties to make it appropriate for us to be providing those services. But it can be a little bit controversial, because now you're talking about developing contracts with potentially exempt properties that are that have not been paid. And so before I started pursuing anything, I was wanted to have a discussion with you all as to whether or not you want me to pursue those, and if you felt that was appropriate.
Comments? Questions? I actually like to do more research on it.
Just to put a little bit of context, if you were just looking at the improvements at the site at St. Edwards for the Bastyr and the lodge, you're talking about over $100,000 in equivalent fees that should be collected. That are not.
So when you go lodge, is it for that?
I'm sorry?
Would we go after the state for that?
You develop a service contract with the state.
And if they go for it.
There's legal precedents and direction that they have to provide, or they have to contract with the emergency services provider for services. Where the law is very old, and so it only talks about fire, but and again, we can have a more robust conversation about how I've developed a resolution and a policy on this, for profit and for not for profit exempt properties, and it's been typically accepted, although I am working with King County right now about redoing their service contract.
I'm curious, the lodge is a private business, is exempt property?
I haven't looked into it significantly, but it's on state. My understanding is that they're paying, again, I can pursue this and get more information. Again, I didn't even want to start working on this unless there was direction from you all. But it's on a state property. My guess is that they have a lease with the state to be there.
I think it's worth gathering more information about how many properties are there, and how much would we be looking to collect from those properties, and is that consistent with what, let's say it's King County, or let's say it's just King County, for example, what does King County do with shoreline? What do they do in other jurisdictions?
Right.
Just is it kind of consistent with, I mean, are we like a donut hole where we're not collecting, but everybody else is, or is this kind of a novel thing that's done in shoreline, but not anywhere else?
It is kind of hit and miss depending, but there's also, it's very hit and miss as to how many properties you have in each of the fire districts. Again, my previous fire department didn't have very many, properties. It wasn't something that we were all that excited about. Shoreline, however, has quite a few properties that we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars of revenue.
Probably would depend too on the burden that those properties are placed on fire service and the
Exactly.
calls generated.
Right, and that's why there is some law, there's some precedent here, and from a legal standpoint, that they have to pay, an appropriate, it's very gray what appropriate is, but they say they have to pay an appropriate fee. But again, I can pursue this and get some more information on this if you'd like. I didn't want to spend much time on this if this was not something that you wanted me to pursue.
Commissioner Wollam? Anything to add?
Yeah, I would be very interested in getting more information on that.
Sure.
That sounds like, it could be quite a bit that we could really use for the fire service. So I think it's worth looking into.
Why don't I start with maybe finding out how many exempt properties we have and being able to take a quick snapshot of that and then, at least provide that information, and I can answer the question about the lodge and best year, as to really what that looks like as well.
Yeah, I just want to be careful that we don't, and I think this is probably where Commissioner Webster is coming from, that we don't overburden these exempt properties and create conflict with the county or the state. And right.
That's, yes, I'll do that too, but that's also, again, that's why I wanted to bring it to you and get some direction. I don't want to start, pursuing this and then, upsetting people, but, again, some of these properties have a much bigger, risk, and a need for us to provide services than others, so, I agree that, pursuing this might upset some things. But at the end of the day, if they're expecting us to provide services, I believe that there should be some kind of compensation for providing those services. So
I think we have pretty clear direction to at least.
I can find some more information and again,
Information down. Yeah. Okay. Anything else on item 4.8? Service contracts? All right, item 4.9, 8-car purchase.
So we have where is it? We have a bid or quote, I should say, from Braun Northwest on purchasing 2 new 8 cars. I went back to Chief Taylor, who's our DC of Support Services, to ensure that there was enough robust conversation amongst the committee to feel comfortable with making the purchase. I'll talk about Braun here in a second, but he reported back that everybody's been, including existing Legacy North Shore employees, in the development of the bid specs and all that. This is a change from older, some existing specs that Legacy North Shore has been purchasing, which is important 4x4 8 cars. I just want to be completely transparent. This is moving to a 2-wheel drive, Braun 8 car. The fleet, our fleet is Braun. There's a number of reasons for using Braun. Again, this gets back to sole sourcing. And I've provided some of those examples and reasons. From a consistency standpoint, again, from the firefighters working off of the same rigs, there isn't huge differences necessarily between 8 cars, but having comfortability and consistency is an important part. From the mechanics, having the same parts, there's efficiencies that are gained there. Knowledge with Braun, so forth. Having a local provider that can also remount the 8 cars, we save a bunch of money by remounting the box, we take the box off the chassis and put it back on a new chassis. And they clean it up and repaint it and all that, and that saves us $50,000 to $70,000 off of the purchase. So there's a number of reasons to use Braun. I don't believe I sent it to the entire board, so I can send. Oh, no, the reason, the justification for sole sourcing on this. But let me make sure that I captured it. Local company. We have a long-standing relationship with them. They have a lifetime warranty on the box, which is part of the reason why we can do the remount as well. And again, probably one of the bigger things is that they're local enough so that we can, if we have a warranty issue, if we want to do the remount or whatever, that they're down I-5 in Chehalis. Sure.
These are the two that we authorized,
Yes.
and then they will be earmarked to be here at our stations, correct?
Yes.
Just want to make sure. Are they being, so there'll be a badge as North Shore?
Will they be what?
Will they have the North Shore logos on it, or what are we?
No, this will be, they'll be labeled Shoreline Fire Department.
Are we gonna do that? Or are you changing the label?
Over time, it's not something that, there's an expense, and it's not necessary, in my opinion, to have to address that at this time, but over time, they'll probably, through attrition, more than likely.
That was one of the questions I didn't know if we'd authorized you to do that, but
So
I don't know if we've done that.
we discussed it.
Discussed it, it was never.
There's some discussion. I attended a rebranding meeting with chief, the deputy chiefs. Yeah, there was no final decision made. The discussion kind of focused on my suggestion that we do something similar to what City of Bothell does with their fire district, right? So it says City of Bothell Fire, and then it also has the fire district's badge on it as well. But no final decision been made.
That's a question I have, because we still own our.
That's correct.
And it should be labeled some way that we can track it. I don't mind shoreline or not, but it should say something about North Shore or some way that I know we'll know the numbers of our engines and stuff like that, but it's still a North Shore.
We have a label that we put on our rigs that serving the communities of, and actually our Medicans already have, because they serve Shoreline, Kenmore, Lake Forest Park, Bothell, Woodinville, actually has all of those on there. And that would be something that we're definitely interested in continuing. As far as if there was ever a separation with our contract, the units would be it's very clear who owns those units from a VIN number and everything else that I identified.
I know we had to start a discussion.
So what do you need, chief? You need a direction to move ahead with the purchase of these 8 cars?
Yes.
Chief, I have a question. I'm pretty familiar with sole sourcing through Braun. They're the only distributors in this area of that apparatus. Have you prepared a resolution for the board to waive the competitive bidding requirements for sole source?
I don't have a resolution. I've never done that by resolution.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm still trying to get up to speed with the differences between the boards.
Yeah, sorry about that. RCW 3904 does, it calls for a resolution when the competitive bidding requirements are waived in this way. So that's the way I'm more familiar with it being done.
We've always just put documentation into our file for, but we can get a resolution done. I have a time sensitivity issue on this, and that
a special meeting to get done, like that's a requirement.
we're okay. I need to. We're gonna lose. We've already gone from red chassis to white chassis, and gonna have to repaint the chassis. And we're gonna lose the white chassis and may not get another chassis until sometime next year. Braun is running out, like, there's just no chassis out there, you know, so I need to,
What's the timeline we're on?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago?
Yeah, I've been delaying the Braun from, you know, trying to sell, you know, sell the other chassis. So if, yeah, I need to get this done, otherwise we're gonna lose the chassis.
Okay, so,
So,
Mr. Paxton, your position is that we need a resolution to waive the competitive bidding process.
Yeah, I've seen this done in the past, where a board might kind of retroactively pass one of these resolutions. But there's an audit risk with that. I don't know how an auditor might interpret that, but it's pretty clear under the statute, to sole source like this, you need to pass a resolution.
I have a question.
Actually, I need to clean up.
Hey, I have a question for legal counsel.
Commissioner Admin.
Does the resolution need to be prepared in advance of writing, or can it be a verbal resolution?
I think a verbal resolution is more of a motion. I think that there needs to be a signed document, and that needs to be reviewed and discussed in open public meeting.
Can we have a special meeting in 2 days?
I will not be available on Thursday to chair the meeting. If Commissioner Admin is available to chair on Thursday.
No, I'm not available either.
Friday would be my earliest availability.
What's our notice?
Actually, if I'm not, I don't know if I even have to be here. Let me look at my schedule.
What's our notice requirement, special?
24 hours.
24 hours.
So we couldn't do it tomorrow.
No.
We can do it by Zoom, we don't have to.
I could be by Zoom, but
What's that?
well, it depends on what time we do it. But I'm tied up most of the day on Friday.
The resolution is fairly simple. One thing we could do is take a short recess. The chief and I could work on a resolution, and we could come back maybe in 10 or 15 minutes. We can throw it up on the screen, review it and approve it.
That sounds good, Mr. Paxton.
That'd be awesome.
Let's do that.
Thank you so much. Hold on, I want to be able to kick that loose with your permission to provide an update. I was going to do it during my district activity, an update on the 57 door and the cameras here, door locks and the cameras.
So this would be something that would.
This would be under my district activity, if I can just have him give a briefing so he can leave.
Okay, let's table item 4.8 for right now. Excuse me, 4.9, thank you. Table 4.9, we're going to transition to an update from the chief, and then after that, we'll take a short recess.
Great, thank you.
Sure. So, previous meetings, the board had approved getting the new door system here, the new door lock control system, as well as the new camera system. Station 57 is done, so the new cameras are installed there, and the new door system is installed there. We have not changed over to having personal individual codes. We just use the one generic, we call it the shoreline code, but it's the one generic code for now. And then we're currently working on this building today, where you see a ladder behind you. And if you look up in the corner there, that's one of the new cameras, and there's also one back behind in this corner. So there's going to be a total of 13 cameras on this property. 10 of those are installed as of now. The other 3 will be tomorrow. So then the station will be completed with new cameras, and the door system is in progress. He has one new door set up today, and he'll have the rest of them done this week. Right. So after both stations are done, we can switch back to having the individual codes again for those that like that. We have to be cautious of those that in Shoreline would have this system at all of our stations yet. We're currently installing it there as well. So I'm going to be careful who has the personal code versus the generic code, because people are trying the wrong code.
Some are working and some are not.
Yeah, so we want to make sure that we have that the information broadcast out to the people of what doors are on what system, until we get all of them switched. Great. Questions on it?
I just wanted to hear in case there was some questions regarding this.
Thanks, Ed.
You bet.
Thanks for your indulgence.
All right, back to regularly scheduled programming. We'll reopen item 4.9, 8-card purchase discussion, and we're gonna take a short recess for the preparation of a resolution. Mr. Paxton, 15 minutes.
That should be fine.
Would you like me to call you from my office, or how would you, or do you have something you can send to me and we can?
Yeah, I think if you could get in front of a computer and on a phone, we could talk about the specifics for this resolution, and then I could email it to you for review.
Okay,
Sound good?
that sounds good. I don't know if I have your phone number. I do not. Maybe if you don't want to say it, then maybe send me an email with it.
Sure, not a problem.
Perfect.
Okay, we will now stop the recording and take a 15-minute recess.
Thank you.
Okay, we're in need of about 10 more additional minutes, so this meeting will stay in recess for 10 more. Does that sound good? Is that
Yeah,
good?
thanks, Commissioner Pratt.
You bet.
We'll be back at 6:43. Thank you.
Okay, welcome back. We will continue with item 4.9. I understand that we have a resolution prepared that will allow us to sole source the purchase of 2 new 8-cars. Mr. Paxton?
Yeah, thanks for giving me a few extra minutes to prepare that. I have had a chance to talk to the chief about this, understand the circumstances permitting the sole source. So let me just walk you through this resolution. It's a resolution to waive the competitive bidding requirements. It has two kind of components. The first is it's going to be specifying a specific brand name for these vehicles, that being North Star Emergency Vehicle. The reason that we're specifying this specific brand of vehicle is because all of our other ambulances and aid cars are the same brand. And that allows for both operational improvements, being familiar with the apparatus that you're on, as well as maintenance savings. Servicing these apparatuses are easier when you have a single type of apparatus to service. And then there's another unique aspect to North Star emergency vehicles in that you can have the chassis remounted. It's a pretty common program that Braun offers. So having specified the brand name of North Star, there is only one distributor of North Star, that is Braun Northwest. We don't have a letter from Braun Northwest specifically to North Shore Fire Department stating that it's the sole supplier of these vehicles, which I usually prefer. But I've received many of these letters in the past, and it's kind of known in the industry that Braun Northwest is the only distributor of North Star emergency vehicles. And so what I've attached as attachment B is a letter that another client of mine has received. And this is a public record. And so just to document that no other companies can sell the North Star emergency vehicles. Those would provide you justification, in my opinion, to waive the competitive bidding requirement. That is ultimately up to the board to decide whether or not you want to specify the North Star emergency vehicle and waive the competitive bidding requirement to allow us to purchase straight through Braun Northwest. But that's what this resolution is offering you the opportunity to do.
Motion. Yes, we do. I'll make a motion that we accept this resolution as written.
Okay, so Mr. Paxton, should I read the resolution, or is it okay for Dawn to read it?
Do we have to read it all within word for word?
No, just the resolve resolution part.
I do have a question for Matt. does it matter that there's not a resolution number? It's 22 dash with an open-ended number, since I don't know what resolution we're up to yet
Yeah.
for 2022. Can that be filled in later?
Yeah, what I would propose is that you put this on the format the district usually uses, update the resolution number, but having the substance here in this meeting, it doesn't need to be read out loud, but if the board reads it to themselves, understands it and passes it, then the formatting can happen when we send it out for electronic signature.
Got it.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Paxton. Okay, so we have a motion to accept the resolution. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the resolution to sole source with North Star Emergency?
It's Braun Northwest.
Ron, sorry. Okay, no discussion. All in favor of the motion to accept the resolution, please say aye.
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 I,
And aye. It is unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your patience, and thank you, Mr. Paxton, for preparing the resolution.
Yeah, I'll send this to Don and to you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Item number 5. No board resolutions were submitted. Item number 6, our consent agenda. Chair would accept the motion.
I make a motion that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 I,
And aye. Consent agenda is passed unanimously. Reports, item number 7, 7.1, fire chief reports.
There's a couple of things I'd like to expand upon, but was there any questions from my report?
Maybe you can expand a little bit on your, oh, thanks, I got it here, on your, I don't know if you want to or not, but I was just, I didn't know where the meetings, you stayed meeting with the state attorney general office. I'm just curious what that-
Yeah, I was curious about that as well.
So I have there was a very broad, and I need to be careful.
on public record request.
Yes, I have a individual that's made upwards of 100 public records requests this year. That continues to make public records requests. And one of them was very broad in nature. And so there was a couple of reasons of contacting the Attorney General's office. It was not only in how, just some clarification on how to respond to it, but also to find out if there was any legislative action to allow for some refinement of the Public Records Act. And basically, everything we were doing was correct and all of that, and basically gave us direction that, we could ask for more specifics and details, to narrow down the focus of the public records request, which we already knew. And then he also provided that there was not much legislative amendments that he had heard of as yet. So I also have been in contact with Representative Ryu, who's pushing a meeting with another representative, and that meeting has not been set up as yet, to see if there's a way for potentially for me and or Representative Ryu to introduce some legislative changes. This is obviously a long-term, fix to the problem, not a short-term. And there has been almost every year that I know of amendments that have been tried to be made, but there's been very little traction on this. And it's almost all of the not power is not the right word, but the authority is with the requester. And so these have been very labor intensive and very disruptive to us being able to do work. And so I've taken on personally all public records requests from this individual. Yeah, I have to have my staff focusing on the stuff that they need to focus on.
Question for you, not involved with that. Harborview had issues, they shut down against BOS.
That's correct.
How soon before that's gonna happen, ever, because I've been over there, it's 4 ambulance sitting out front.
Yeah.
Waiting cars.
This is something that I've kind of reported out in the past, but this is an ongoing, you're absolutely right. This is an ongoing situation with what we call wall time. And that's the time it takes for us to arrive with a patient to be able to transfer the care to the hospital. This is a very systemic issue. It's not specific to any hospital or even our county. It's nationwide. There's a shortage of nurses. It's compounded by many things. Some of it is the attracting nurses to go elsewhere under contract and be what they call traveling nurses. You know, for example, I was told this, I don't know if it's absolutely accurate, but there's 60,000 nurses registered in the state of Washington, and only half of them are working here. You know, well, that's a problem. That's helping that nursing shortage. But it's also the fact of the financial challenges that hospitals are having. It's the challenge that through the COVID and all that there's a bunch of nursing homes and assisted living, facilities that have gone out of business. So as the hospitals bring patients into the ER, the thought is that they could move upstairs to a bed and then move out of that to an assisted or nursing home or back home. And there's no relief at the end. So it bottlenecks all the way back to us, which results in long, again, what we call wall times and not being able to transfer the patient to the ER. That is what ended up causing Harborview to what's called divert. And of course, when they divert, then the problem expands to other places as well. This is something that pretty much every meeting that I've been attending, that's appropriate to bring it up. That I've been bringing it up for months. It's something that is, in fact, I just found out that Dr. Ray and Michelle Ford, our director of King County EMS, is already working at this at the state level too. Trying to bring some governor type of emphasis or focus on this to try and relieve some pressure. I don't know what the solutions are, but what I am very concerned about is that we have this issue right now, and it's right in front of us, and it's a pretty significant one. We're in the summer months. If we get into the fall months or winter months, when we're into more of the cold and flu season, and there's more demands put on our system, it's even going to get worse. So this is definitely a high priority, to try and address, but there is not a good solution, at least for the short term.
Other questions?
You said there was some areas you wanted to elaborate.
Yes, so I mentioned that we're building out the budget calendar. And I believe that I've brought this up in previous meetings, and I'm not sure if we chose a rep or not, but I would ask that if there is a rep from a representative from the board to sit on our finance committee, I welcome and encourage a commissioner to sit on the committee to see how we develop the budget for the next year, and to help represent and add perspective, but also to be a voice back to the board as to what that process looked like and so forth. And so I'm building out the budget calendar and all that, and that was one of the questions I had, was if there was a desire by any of the board members to sit on that committee.
I'd be willing to do it unless there's another commissioner that has strong interest. Commissioner Webster. Okay. Any other commissioners with interest? Okay.
I have other committees too, that if, the negotiations committee and labor management committee and things of that nature, strategic planning. As we come up on those meetings, I can come back and ask if there's, board members that want to be part of that as well. So I welcome, Commissioner Webster to be involved. So I built out a draft calendar that I will probably send to you tomorrow, for feedback on, looking at the dates. Part of that, discussion is, again, this is some new territory a little bit of how to adopt the budget for next year, and whether or not, for example, we need to have a board or a public hearing on the fire benefit charge and the presentation of the budget. Would you like to have a joint meeting or keep those completely separated? And I can present the budget basically twice. There's and part of it is that there will, in 2023, there will be an amount that will need to be transferred from North Shore into the shoreline, but transfer of revenues. And so I'm trying to figure out what you want to see. Do you want a full presentation of the entire budget? I typically present it in draft form with a public hearing, for input from anybody that wants to attend. Typically, we don't have a lot of people that attend. And then I typically have a special board meeting to go line by line for any discussion or questions that there might be. I just want to make sure that I'm meeting your guys's expectations.
I think traditionally we've had the budget given to us, at least in draft form, gives us an opportunity to kind of digest it. And then at the public meeting, it's more kind of big picture. We've also been allowed to sit down one-on-one with the chief and have questions answered individually. Yeah.
Do you want to have, because we will have to have public hearings here for our fire benefit charge, or I should say the North Shore fire benefit charge, and there's a shoreline fire benefit charge that are separated. And those parts we have to keep separated, for sure. Would you like, for example, that special board meeting that I was talking about with the shoreline commissioners, would you like to have a joint board meeting where I go through the entire budget and answer any questions, or would you rather do that digitally or one-on-one, or do you have any input on that?
I think at this point, because we're still, I think we need to have it sent to us ahead of time before we have a meeting. I believe we should probably keep it, do some one-on-one with you to start off.
Okay, I definitely send this. I send it out in beforehand,
Right.
and all that. It's just, it's
And last time it took me about 3 weeks to get to the.
yeah.
And but brought up a number of questions.
Sure.
Changes.
I think, Chief, that providing the budget in advance of the meeting to our board, I don't know if your board does the same, but providing in advance would be very helpful to give us some time to kind of process and digest. I think that a joint meeting is appropriate for kind of the line by line, right? That we're talking about, the section meeting. And we may have questions that's for questions from your board or vice versa, right?
Okay.
And I think that would be good, but then we also have the fire benefit charge meeting that has to be us exclusively.
Right.
Correct.
Yes.
Everyone good with that?
And obviously too, separate resolutions and all that too. Yeah. Okay, I will work on revising this schedule a little bit and then push this out to the entire board. But then I also need to coordinate with you for some of the meetings, and then you just keep giving me feedback as to what you want to see, because I want to make sure that I'm meeting your expectations as we move forward. As it sits now, roughly, October will be a very busy month. My plan is always to have it done, by the end of October, beginning of November. So we have a whole month to, if there's any more revisions and plenty of time to adopt it and get it to the county by then. So, all right.
Chief,
that was it.
I don't know that we need to have individual meetings with each North Shore commissioner, but it could be open to an individual meeting if one of the commissioners.
Absolutely. And again, as I'm going to send this out. So as you have questions too, just send me emails too, or give me a call, or we can coordinate and sit down and have a one-on-one.
Great.
So
thank you.
This will be a very challenging process as we continue. I'm very happy, in the future, but this first one will be very, interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions for the chief on his report? Okay, commissioner reports. Seeing none. Legal counsel report, Mr. Paxton.
None.
Right. Upcoming board agenda items. Don, would you, there was a couple during the course of the meeting.
You wanted to keep the reviewed station alerting system proposals on for future meeting, and then also the update of the subcommittee of administrative activities not covered under the ILA. And then there was the policy 1400 that you guys wanted to do next time.
and 1410.
And 1410, thank you,
Separate line item.
Yeah.
thank you.
Commissioner Wong, will we have a final copy of 1410 at the next meeting in September? Yes, perfect. Okay. Anything else that we'd like to see added to the agenda? All right. Without objection, this meeting has been adjourned. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.